Tyler, it's good to have you back. We are coming back for the 2019 season. You ready to go?
I'm all fired up. I had a 45-minute phone call conversation with Rick Schantz earlier today. I'm ready. It's been way too long. I'm already ready for March 8th or March 9th, the weekend. So very excited to be back with you and to be talking some footy. And it's football season. Let's do it.
I appreciate that. And, March 9th is the big day, San Antonio. We have a group of us that are going to go. So there is going to be a group of probably about 15 of us actually in San Antonio, which should be a lot of fun.
Anything less from the best fans in the USL.
I know. Look at these standards we have to keep up.
Set
but wait, say one more time.
Set by Monica McPherson.
Yeah, which she sets a standard that nobody can live up to. She's crazy. But before we get to San Antonio, of course, we have what I consider to be the first real game of the season, even though it is preseason, and that's going against our friends up at Real Salt Lake, and I use that term friends loosely. We had spoken just briefly over text, and you have some great insight onto what we're going to be facing up there. So you want to start diving into that a little bit?
Yeah, so, Real Salt Lake is a playoff team. They've been to the postseason 9 out of the last 11 seasons in Major League Soccer. They're an MLS Cup winner in 2009. They got to a final. This is sort of like a...
They're one of the big boys.
It's one of the big boys, and, if I'm going to use a basketball reference, San Antonio Spurs might be a decent one just because they're always there. They're rarely missing out on the playoffs. The Spurs don't ever miss out on the playoffs, but... they're one of the big boys. Mike Pecky, I think, has really brought some good ideas in. They've got some good young talent. They got some great veteran talent. They have some interesting players on the field. Solomon Asante and João Plata are going to be like fighting for the shortest guy on the field. Plata's the shortest guy in the history of Major League Soccer, and Solo obviously, is about 1/3 the size of Chris Cortez. So it's going to be interesting to see those two go at it.
Many jokes that I will not make right now.
Exactly. Let's stay away from it. Because Solo hasn't even done anything yet this year. So until he does, we'll leave him alone.
There we go.
No, but it should be a really interesting game, and it's not. You said, the Friends thing, and loosely there is a bit of a rivalry now, especially with Phoenix having the academy. You're gonna have fights for some of the best talent in the area because. Before that, Arizona kids didn't have anywhere else to go other than Real Salt Lake, Arizona. And now you have the opportunity for, the Phoenix Rising Academy, and you have Brandon Keniston, who's already come along, Elijah Paul, who came back to Phoenix, which Rick Schantz, is beyond proud of. And Elijah Paul, looks like he looks older than I do. And, I'm, 9 years older than the kid. He just is a beast, and he's a physical specimen. But no, just from Real Salt Lake is a couple more weeks into the preseason than Phoenix is, and that's always the case with MLS versus USL championship teams when we're in the Mobile Mini Sun Cup. But it should just be a really, really, really good test. And if you remember back to the Red Bull game last year, which was actually played at the Phoenix Rising Soccer Complex, they basically left their starters in for 90 minutes, and Rick was basically just like, screw it. We're just going to see how we line up with them toe to toe, and it ended up being a late game winner from Tyler Adams, but. That they were preparing for Champions League, so it's a little bit different. I don't know if we'll see that exactly from Real Salt Lake, but it should be a really, really interesting. I don't want to say test because that's not the right word. Quiz. It's a quiz. It's a prepared quiz that Phoenix is going to have, and it's just all in preparation for San Antonio.
I think that's fair, and one of the things that I fear the most about Real Salt Lake is their attack. And I think the huge strength that we're bringing to the field this year is defense. So I'm really expecting a brawl on the pitch. It's just going to be a fantastic starter to kick off, end the preseason and kick off the real season. What do you expect to see on the pitch?
I'm expecting to see some of the ideas start to come out. Rick's conversation this morning was centered around, just trying to build a brand of Phoenix, because as you and I talked about before we hopped on, it's Phoenix, it's FC Tucson, it's the academy. You have the path to pro in front of you. And now as a club, and especially with Rick Schantz being at the helm of it, you now have to sort of carve out what you're going to look like. And obviously some of the big, models for them to look at are Manchester City, Barcelona, in terms of the style that they want to try to play. Now, it's easy to say that, but to put it into practice is different. So I think you're going to see a Phoenix team that's going to try to play out the back. You're going to split your center backs, Joey Farrell and whoever's going to be next to him, AJ Cochran, Luigi Mala, whatever pairing they go with at the back, they're going to be totally wide, probably on either edge of the 18. Mustafa and Amadou Dia are going to be flying up and down the flanks, and you're just going to see them play. I mean, Rick loves the idea of really paying homage to the beautiful game and having it look beautiful, and it's just going to be about trying to pull all those ideas out. And you're going to see Adam John try to hold things up, Solomon Asante, Jason Johnson, Junior Fleming's getting into the attack, and obviously when you lose it, try to win it right back. That's what makes Man City, Liverpool so great in the Premier League, is that because they're playing in the opposition's defensive third so much, when you lose the ball, the possession's not over. You can go back and get it and try to punish them that way. So I think you'll see some of that. But you're just going to see them try to do things against a very good MLS team who's a couple weeks ahead of them in terms of preparation. And like you said, their attack is great. I mean, you have Corey Baird, you have Kyle Beckerman holding things down in the middle of the field. Baird's coming off of his first 2 caps for the U.S. men's national team, set up the Mihailovic goal, which is the first ever in the Berhalter area. So it's going to be a really interesting game in terms of how Phoenix is going to handle it. And, Rambo was talking to Devin Kerr the other day about the Red Bull game, and he just said, we've never seen a press like that before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, right? Because they teach that from a very, very young age. And, Real Salt Lake has their principles, and it's not exactly the same as New York Red Bulls, but I think that you're going to see some stuff in terms of trying to get after Phoenix in little pockets of the game. But, from a Phoenix standpoint, I think, like you said, I think defense is going to be key, trying to lock things down and, obviously always trying to get a clean sheet and then making the most of your opportunities. I mean, Rick pointed to the Tulsa game, his second game in charge, which is after the Las Vegas game, and Jason Johnson's goal. He was like, that was probably the best representation of how we want to play. Granted, it was against a Tulsa team who was, at the bottom of the barrel in the Western Conference, but it doesn't matter in terms of that's what you want your ideas to look like and what you want the product to look like in the offensive third. So Phoenix fans can sort of, reel back the memory bank and think to that, that's what they're going to try to be pulling out against, albeit, a playoff team in the Western Conference of the MLS.
So that's interesting to me. A couple things that you said there. First of all, one of the key factors for me is watching what Beckerman does in the midfield, because he is such a great visionary with the ball. It's going to be interesting to see how well our guys can read what Beckerman's trying to pull off and how he's going to feed the forwards. I see our team, because this was a topic of discussion after the end of last season. Are we going to be a fast team again this next year? And the answer to me now is resoundingly, yes, we are. We've got, I'm sorry?
Probably faster.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, with the addition of Mustafa, we were saying earlier, Diaz on one side, he's fast and he's an attack-oriented back, and so is Mustafa. And I can see all sorts of new opportunities to generate chances. I kind of like this JJ analogy, because if I remember right, JJ was fed a fairly short pass, and I don't even remember who it was from, but then he went around, he got around one defender, and then, he made the play, he finished. It wasn't a long ball play. It wasn't, one of those, we just happened to get lucky and the ball bounced the right way. It was a very calculated play. Now, granted, JJ had to finish that play. It wasn't like he had an open pitch between himself and the goal. But I like that, because to me that says smart midfield play, really fast midfield play, and we got to rely on the jets of the players to make some space. I think that's cool.
It's very cool. And, the biggest thing, with that style of play is just, these guys need to express themselves. I mean, Bobby said it best, when we were out in Phoenix and JJ was going through that little rough patch from about, early, mid, late August until the playoffs started. And he was like, we just want to see JJ be JJ. It's like we're paying JJ to score goals and to be athletic and to, maybe not pull off a Tulsa goal every single game, or else he wouldn't be playing in the USL Championship, but to just be himself and to express himself. And that's what you hear from all of the best coaches and players in the world, especially players talking about their coaches. And Pep Guardiola is obviously one of the people to look at. And he's basically saying to his players, I'll get you from our back our back line with the ball into the final third. But once you get there, I can't do anything for you because that's all instinct, that's all creativity, it's all improvisation. So, what you saw from JJ on that play, and I remember what you're talking about, it was against Las Vegas, and he ended up cutting it back to his right and scoring, which was one of the few times that we'll see JJ with his right foot score. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of it this year. But it's just, read the game, read what they're giving you, and just react off that. And what JJ saw was a ton of space and an opportunity to go at players 1v1. And I think that, the more that they can get out of guys like Solomon, JJ, Junior Flemings, Joey Calistri, and just say, if you're matched up 1v1 with people, we brought you in because you're fast, you're good on the ball, go at them. Make defenders miss, break down lines, and get service in the box or have one yourself. And I think that that's a lot of what you're going to see.
Yeah, when JJ was kind of in that slump, one of the things I noticed was that he was getting the ball, 3/4 of the way up to midfield, and then he would just try to use his jets to go down the edge of the field and get by the defender out wide, and then he had all the rest of the team to get through in order to get to the goal and make a shot. And 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to get in the way, put their foot in front of the ball, and take it away. There's only so much you can do unless you're Ronaldo. What I like about what you're saying is, and I hate to use this because I really don't like the team, but it's kind of Barcelona play to me. Quick hit passes. You're not afraid to move it back in the midfield just a hair to be able to get that open guy that's closer up to the box. So I'm looking forward to that. That is a whole new style of play for us. I think we did a little bit too much long ball last year. I'd like to see less of that. And it seems to me that's the direction we're going to be going. Of course, we're going to find out soon. I could be all wet.
We're going to find out, but listen, that's what we're hearing right now, right? I mean, it's just, you just sort of got to wait and see. We can speculate all we want, but at the end of the day, it's just going to be a matter of how they react, because there were a number of times last season when Rick would have a plan in place, and then the guys would sometimes derail from it for good or for better or for worse if they saw something they didn't like, or if they just, went off the rails for a little bit.
Frustration. It was frustration.
Exactly.
And that's got to be controlled. So, we were talking briefly before about some of the new players that we brought on. I think we are in agreement on who the standout is amongst those players for right now. You want to talk a little bit about him?
Yeah, I mean, Junior Flemings is just sort of, when you look at the guys that they've brought in, from an offensive standpoint, he seems to be the one that sort of fits the mold the best, right? I mean, he's technical on the ball. He already has a relationship with Kevon Lambert, just in terms of the Jamaican national team and the Reggae Boys, and it was actually Kevon who sort of acted as the reference for Junior Flemings. And talking to Rick, he said that's one of the best ways to get players, because Junior Flemings is an Eastern Conference guy, and just like fans don't, I mean, the coaches as well are so focused on the Western Conference because that's the only people that you're playing. So why pay that much attention to the Eastern Conference if you're not going to see them until the USL Cup final? But they obviously did the research and everything like that, but Kevon Lambert acted as a reference, and they just said, you're going to love his work rate. He's good on the ball. He's intelligent when he gets into the attacking third and can express himself. And I think that that's going to be sort of a buzz phrase for Phoenix this year. But he just seems to fit the mold the best, in the attacking third. I think, his counterpart on the defensive side is probably Mustafa Dembaya, just in terms of his athletic ability, his 1v1 defending, and his ability to get into the attacking third using his pace. Rick says that, fans are just going to love him, and that you're just going to be wowed with his speed and his quickness and agility. But Junior seems to be the one that, is turning a lot of heads. And he said the fight between Solo, Calistri, and Junior Flemings week in and week out in terms of fighting for those wing positions is something to behold. He loves the competition. Absolutely loves it. And when he was trying to rile people up in the middle of the season, he just pins them against each other. He says, nobody's spot is safe. Go ahead, win your starting spot, and that's when you bring out the best stuff. And when you look at those Chicago Bulls teams with Michael Jordan, he always said the practices were more difficult than the actual games, and then that's what makes it easy. And having that friendly competition, albeit, fighting for your job in the starting 11, is only going to make them better.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Junior Fleming is, I think, going to be the guy potentially who makes the biggest difference. But we do have other. Mustafa, I think Adam John has some potential there too. I mean, overall, it's going to be a different team, and I'm looking forward to it. Real Salt Lake will not know what hit them, because I'm fairly sure what we've put on the pitch so far is going to be very different stylistically than what we're going to see against Real Salt Lake. I think Schantz is going to mix it up. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears on you completely.
All right.
And then we'll wrap this thing up. What are your thoughts on Indy 11 and what they've been doing with stacking the roster with MLS players?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Indy, right? Not Nashville.
Yes, yeah.
Indy. Okay.
Indy.
Just wanted to double check. I mean, Indy has sort of, gone out and got it this offseason. There's no two ways about it. I mean, bringing in Ilya Illich, who was a double guy from a year ago in assists and goals, and then to also be able to get a Golden Boot nominee in Thomasina Voltson and bring back your core, only lose Suni Saad in terms of a major contributor from a year ago, bring in Ioze. I'm sure I'm missing some names, but those are just the big ones. I mean, I was thinking about this in the car today while I was on my way to go get falafel for lunch, as I was telling you earlier. The Eastern Conference is sort of like the AFC in the NFL, because if you're going to bet against Louisville, who are basically showing themselves to be a New England Patriots version of the USL Championship, you might want to pump the brakes, but it's difficult to ignore the amount of talent that Indy has brought in, that Nashville has brought in. Then you're getting into the Chiefs, and there's a lot of good young talent, but can they put it, they're a little inexperienced when it comes to USL Championship success. Can they, put it on the field? I mean, Thomasina Voltson brought Orange County to a Western Conference final, but just in terms of Indy 11 as a whole, I mean, it's tough to peg anybody other than, Indy 11 and Nashville as the favorite, just because it seems like they've done the most amount of work and spent the most amount of money in the offseason. But Louisville really hasn't lost all that much. They've lost Ranjit Singh and Kyle Smith, a keeper and somebody who is a big part of their back line, which cannot be understated. But they also have brought in some really good pieces. So the Eastern Conference is, it's going to turn into a little bit more of the Western Conference in terms of the amount of goals scored, I think, and just the offensive mentality. Don't get me wrong. Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Bob Lilly are always going to be, defensive minded and everything like that. But, between those three teams, and especially just so close geographically, if I'm, correct on that, and just in terms of how the United States is made up, they're all kind of on top of each other in the Midwest for the most part. I mean, it's just a great little pocket of football in the USL Championship Eastern Conference that I think is going to turn a lot of heads. And it's anybody's guess, who's going to come out on top in the regular season. And then, even more so once we get to the playoffs, what about, 10 months from now?
Yeah, we have a lot of footy to play.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. Indy definitely is looking, to me, it looks like they are just investing so they can get a cup. I mean, they are putting in, there are a lot of big time players there. It's going to make it tough, but Louisville can't be discounted, because you're right. There's not really that much of a difference in what Louisville has changed for this year. So it's going to be interesting. It'll be a dogfight in the East. Hopefully they just do enough damage to each other that when we show up for the Championship Cup, we can just.
What are you just saying? There's a lot of footy to be played. Come on now. We don't even have our last preseason game under our belt.
Well, what'd be great is if they all show up on the pitch and there's zero chemistry in Indy and they can't even pass the ball to each other and they're all falling down. That would be great, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it's not like that. It's not like an NBA team with the Thunder where there's not enough basketball to go around. Soccer is very much a team game. Got to get on it. Got to get off it. So I think that they'll be okay. But just competing with each other, I think you're right. It's just they're going to beat each other up. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it'll be, it's going to be a great season. Last season was a great season, but this one really, truly is shaping up. And we haven't even gotten into our competitors on the West Coast, and that'll be another time. But the way things are shaping up, the level of talent that's being brought in, even with the new teams, it's just going to make for a fantastic 2019. It almost seems a little bit, and don't say this too loud, a little more fun than the MLS right now.
Wow.
I'm just saying, maybe I'm biased.
Hot takes from Kevin on a Thursday afternoon.
I know, right? I haven't even had a beer yet.
You just skip Bayless of the USL Championship. You just.
I'm not a lack of opinion here. It's interesting, and I got to have something good because I'm a Bayern Munich fan, and oh man, it's been a rough season. It's just been very, very tough. Anyways, thank you so much for your time. I am looking forward to doing this all season.
Oh, yeah.
there's going to be a lot to talk about, no doubt about it, especially with this new team developing for Phoenix Rising. In the meantime, I look forward to hearing you making the calls for the game up on Saturday.
Yep, we'll be on the CW, first broadcast ever on the CW.
Yeah, going to be good stuff. And, I got to give them props. Even though they won't recognize my show as anything worth anything at this point, I got to work on that. They are doing a great job with the marketing and the advertising and everything. This is the shot in the arm from a media perspective that Phoenix Racing really needed. And so even though I'm completely jealous of their media day access and their fancy cameras and young, good-looking announcers, I will deal with it because it's good for the team overall. Well, no, not you. I'm talking about me. I shouldn't say announcers.
Yeah, okay, I see. I mean,
I people are on YouTube and they're looking.
Kevin was standing behind me and you were talking about.
Yeah. Sorry, Tyler. I was just talking about me.
Yeah, naturally. Now I get it.
I'm like, you want me to stand next to her? No.
Again, Skip Bayless of the USL Championship, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Gates.
There you go. All right. Well, listen, thanks for putting up with me and for spending time. We'll see how Saturday turns out, and we will do this again.
All right. Sounds good, Kev. Enjoy the game.